Long time no see, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to some more videos, and man, oh man, do I got a treat for you guys. Today we'll be talking about the mechanics of Granblue Fantasy Versus. Now, before I get into the actual video, I'd like to point out that these mechanics were all pointed out and speculated in the many trailers that have come out, and also the Daigo vs. Fudo video. So basically what I'm trying to say is the game is not out yet, so some of these things are subject to change. But who knows, they might implement some more mechanics, or possibly some other changes, from now until the release of Granblue Fantasy Versus. Either or, I'll be going over and explaining all the mechanics that I pinpointed out during the gameplay and the trailers. Now, there are some things that are left unclear about the game during the creation of this video, such as the button layouts, the specific buttons that are mapped to specific mechanics, whether or not the grab button is a actual grab button or if it's a combination of buttons, if there's macros, if there's all sorts of different things like that, if it's a 4 button, if it's a 5 button, if it's a 6 button, we don't know. However, I'll still be explaining all the basic mechanics of Granblue Fantasy Versus to give you guys an idea as to what you can expect when playing Granblue Fantasy Versus when you go into the actual beta coming out very soon. I'll be dissecting this into 3 different sections. It'll be the HUD, the offensive mechanics, and the defensive mechanics. So let's get right into it. First and foremost, let's talk about the HUD for Granblue Fantasy Versus. It looks amazing in my opinion. It gives a nice look that looks very reminiscent to the mobile game. Let's start in the HUD, let's say the portrait. It's tucked nicely, showing the face of the character that you're currently playing, with a simple, basic, and pleasing to look at aesthetic. No colors covering it, nothing else covering it, just a portrait. Very, very simple. Right next to it, we have the round count placed neatly on top of the screen and above the health bar, which I think is a pretty nice touch. Most fighting games in today's age have the round count below the timer or next to the health bars. It's nice to see that they put that up there to make sure that you are looking at more of the action with nothing overlaying it. It looks nice and clean and it's out of the way, but still visible to the eye. Then we have the actual health bar. It's a fairly standard, clean looking health bar that shows a healthy green bar, so you get to about 30% or less of your health. In that case, it shows orange. Along with that, it also can turn blue to indicate that you can execute a devastating super called Super Skybound Art. Below the health bar, we have the SB gauge, which stands for the Skybound gauge. This is what you as the player have to fill up by executing attacks, blocking attacks, and other possible miscellaneous tasks. And once you fill up your Skybound gauge, you can execute a Skybound Art, which is the supers of the game, essentially. A little bit of a side note, if your health is low and your health bar turns blue, like I mentioned earlier, your Skybound gauge will also turn blue. So alongside the health bar, your actual Skybound gauge will also turn blue. So yeah, once you see it go blue, a Super Skybound Art is waiting for you to be unleashed, which is a more devastating version of the regular Skybound Art. Now, we're not 100% sure if these are separate supers or if it's the same super but just more devastating. We don't know. This falls under the miscellaneous category of things that are undetermined during the time of the video. Also, if you execute a Skybound Art, whether it be a super one or a regular one, all of your skills go into cooldown. So once you finish with your Skybound Art, you cannot use your skills until they fill up completely. And speaking of skills, those are right next to your Skybound gauge. Those are your skill gauges. Skills in Granblue Fantasy Versus have a cooldown. There are also 2 versions to every single one of your skills. There's a regular version, then there's a strong version. For the time being, I'm going to be calling them EX versions. EX versions have longer cooldown times whenever you execute them. The regular versions have a fairly short cooldown time compared to the EX ones. Mostly because the EX versions of those skills can lead to combo extensions and possibly better frame data. Every skill is bound to your skill button, and depending on which direction you press plus the actual skill button, you execute different special moves. There is forward, backward, down, and neutral skill. Each direction executes a different move. However, you can't execute motions with the skill button, similar to how you can in other traditional fighting games. So there are 2 options in the game for you to execute skills. You can execute them easily, or you can execute them manually. There is a difference between the 2. If you execute the special move manually, you actually get less cooldown than if you execute them easily. This offers a nice diverse mechanic that can still give newer players an edge while still catering to a more competitive audience. Other miscellaneous things include having a beveled gold hit counter and also messages that displays info on specific situations. For example, if you execute a special move that is invincible, then it will display a message that says invincible. Also, this is not necessarily confirmed, but I'm fairly confident confident that whenever you execute a special move manually, a message gets displayed that says good, indicating that the player executed a special move manually instead of easily. Another thing that I will mention during this section of the video is that Skybound arts actually kill with chip. If you guys don't know what chip is, whenever you're blocking, you take a percentage of damage. And if your health is low and your opponent does a Skybound art, you're going to die. I'm not sure if this is only pertaining to the Skybound art or if this is universal throughout all the special moves, but if I were to make an educated guess, I'm pretty sure this is only pertaining to the Skybound arts. Now that I explained the HUD to you guys, let's go over to some more offensive mechanics. For example, grabs. There are grabs in Granblue Fantasy Versus. By you going up to your opponent and executing a grab, you can catch them off guard while they're blocking, and the only way for them to be able to escape it is to jump away or tech the grab. Speaking of teching grabs, there's a unique take on teching grabs in this game. Just to reiterate, it is still unclear whether or not there's a grab button or if it's a combination of buttons. But what we do know is if you try to grab the opponent and they decide to break the grab or tech the grab, there are three things that you need to be aware of. There's the immediate tech, where you instantly tech, then you break off and reset the neutral. There's also a late tech, and this is a newer mechanic that I haven't seen in any other fighting game. Well, if you decide to tech the grab, but tech a little later than normal, you still tech the grab, but you receive about 30% of the intended damage that you were supposed to take if you didn't tech the grab. And of course, last but not least, there's the no tech, or if you don't tech at all, you just take the grab and receive damage. One other thing that I wanted to throw in here is that Fairy is a character with an air grab. And for the longest time, we all thought that Fairy was the only one with an air grab, but it turns out that everybody has an air grab. So the air grab is more of a universal mechanic. Just wanted to get that out there before I ended the video for you guys to know during the beta times. Shoutouts to Majin Obama for providing that information. The next mechanic that I want to talk about is the universal overhead. Every character has a unique overhead where you get a blue little flash and hop in the air and hit you with an attack that you can only block standing up. I'm pretty glad that they decided to put in a universal overhead, and it's very similar to Dragon Ball FighterZ where everybody has a hopping type of overhead. Every character animation is different though, and this mechanic can set up some mind games because this mechanic is grab invincible, which means that if they run up to the opponent and the opponent thinks that you're gonna grab them and tries to tech the grab, but you instead use a universal overhead, you go straight through the grab and ended up hitting them right on the noggin. We saw this constantly in the Daigo vs. Fudo set, and let me tell you, I am all on board for a grab overhead mix-up mentality. Alongside that, while this is still undetermined, every character seems to have a 3-piece auto combo, a series of consecutive attacks that look to be mapped to a single button, where every character can cancel this auto combo into a special move or a skybound art. But I don't think the whole game will consist of auto combos like BB Tag, for example. It'll be more like a Persona 4 Arena layout, where they have designated auto combos in the A button, but still have their own independent buttons that you can use to cancel into special moves, and so on and so forth. But we will see in the future on the developments of the attack buttons and in the future beta coming up. Some other miscellaneous things that are in the game is the indicators of overheads and lows. This is pretty traditional when it comes to Arc System games, but I'll let you know right now that whenever the opponent strikes you with a low hitting attack, that you can only block crouching, and in this instance, if you are stand blocking, when the opponent hits you low, there's an exclamation point that pops up. On the other side to that coin, there's a situation that's vice versa. If the opponent hits you with an attack that you can only block standing up, but you are crouch blocking in the situation, then 2 exclamation points will pop up, indicating that you were hit with an overhead. It could also be quotation marks, I'm not sure. Some other quick miscellaneous things is that if you counter hit your universal overhead, you can continue the combo, which is really nice. And another very small one is that you can't carry meter over from round to round, so spend your cash, people, whenever you go for a skybound art. And considering how much meter you gain, I don't think that will be much of a problem. Overall, the offensive mechanics are pretty awesome. I'm a big fan of the universal overhead, and I'm also a big fan of the one button auto combo while still having independent buttons. Now that we went over most of the offensive tools, we can actually go into the defensive tools that Granblue Fantasy Versus has to offer. And let me tell you, they offer you a plethora of defensive tools. For example, this game has a multi-block function. Don't know what that means? Don't worry, let me explain it to you. Where just like the skills, there is an easy way to block and there is a manual way to block. This game offers a block button, where all you do is hold down the button and not worry about left-right mix-ups, basically cross-ups. You only need to worry about low overhead mix-ups. Then there's the option to block directionally, where you hold back and block standing and down back to block crouching. So what's the difference, you say? Why should I even use directional blocking over holding a button? It's way easier to do it that way. You don't really have to worry about anything. Well, same thing with the skills. There's more of a reward for blocking regularly than blocking easily. But this concept also coincides with another mechanic in the game called just blocking. Just blocking is another term for a very popular mechanic in the Arc System games called instant blocking, where if you perfectly block an attack, you flash white. And depending on the circumstances, you might gain more meter, or more importantly, you gain better frame advantage. This technique is very important in high level play, and they've incorporated a lot into different Arc System games, and they also incorporated it into MK11. And now they're going to be incorporating it into Granblue Fantasy Versus. So it's a very high level mechanic that gives you more reward for blocking essentially. So going back to the original question, why should I block with the directional inputs where I can just hold a button to block? Well, you only get this just block mechanic if you block directionally, not with holding a button. So if you hold down a button to block, that all of a sudden takes away your ability to get better frame advantage and possibly more meter. On top of that, I actually forgot to mention this, if the opponent decides to grab you while you are holding the block button, and then you decide to tech the grab, no matter how fast you try to tech that grab, a late tech will always come out. So no matter what, you're always going to be taking some damage. So it's pretty smart to block directionally in that regard. Another defensive mechanic alongside the block button is the evasive maneuver and the spot dodge. Also bound to the block button, depending on the input that you press, you can execute a dodge that moves you forward, evading any attacks, projectiles, and even characters themselves. You can also do the same with a dodge that lets you stay in place and evade any attacks, similar to Smash Bros. Spot dodging mechanic. With all these mechanics put together, it's really nice to see that these mechanics were all very well thought out, keeping the beginner players in mind and also the competitive players in mind as well. And that about does it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I tried to pinpoint out as much of the mechanics as I could from all the trailers, from all the footage that I could gather up from Granblue Fantasy Versus, but overall we won't know for sure until the beta comes out. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know if you guys learned something new from this video, and hopefully you guys can get into the beta. If you guys have not yet, please sign up for the beta right now. Try to get a hold of this game, try to play the game. This is only available for PS4, unfortunately, so if you do have a PS4, ready up, because you are eligible to be able to play Granblue Fantasy Versus. Anyways, I'll leave you off with my whole YouTube spiel here. Follow me on Twitter if you guys want to see anything on the channel, or myself. Subscribe to the channel for more Granblue Fantasy Versus. Like the video if you guys did, if you want to see more of these type of videos. And of course, sign up for the beta, please. Take it easy, everybody. I'll see you guys next time.